Welcome to Cosmic Comics, Games and Collectibles, your zen of geekism. We carry comics old and new, magazines, toys, games like Pokemon, Magic, D&D. Want Godzilla, Ultraman, Star Trek, Ninja Turtles, Funko Pops? You'll find it all here. Shop our Cosmic Sound Room and pick up a record or two. Enjoy our Comic Coffee Lounge with a cup of Sasquatch coffee or a delicious menu item while geeking out over a super cool movie on our big screen. Come by and say hello to Maui. Cosmic Comic, Games and Collectibles. Superman loves us, and so will you.
Hi everyone, Daphne Lage here. Join Nita Lanning and me on the Ragin' 2 the Vlogs show, where we talk about everything, nothing, and all the bits in between. Looking for hour-long conversations about indie comics, social media marketing, and crowdfunding, with the occasional rant and story time? Head on over to the Ragin' 2 channel on YouTube, Mondays through Fridays at 11 a.m. Eastern to join in the chat.
Hit the button.
And it is 7 o'clock Central Time, and we are here for the LCS Guys Show with Michael Tierney in Little Rock, Arkansas. Michael, how you doing today, man?
Doing great. How are you doing today, RJ?
I am doing well and ready to get the day over with and just kind of
Saturday night, get a belly full of beer.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I know how lazy I am, so I force myself into situations where I can't be. Like, if I have a bunch of stuff to do, I'll pile it on the bed. You want to go to bed? Get that stuff done, because you don't have one to go to if you don't. So I just looked over and said, oh, I've got a whole bunch of packing material over there I've got to do something with. Packing, the distribution has begun, and so is the publishing. The Devil You Know Better is done. All the authors have been paid. The two
Even
authors
better.
who wanted, always take care of that first. And for the two authors who wanted physical checks, you're not paid yet. It's in the mail. It's coming. They were just sent out yesterday, cashier's checks, so they look real nice. But we are doing a special Indiegogo edition of this, Michael. I had always planned to do this. I had planned to say, hey, we're going to do a limited edition. It'll be signed by Mike Barron and Hart Fisher. But we've upped the game on it. First of all, it's going to be hardcover. The special edition will be. And secondly, we have conscripted an artist to do some chapter illustrations. like one per each story. And for every $500 goal we hit, we will be adding one up to the full 20. So if you want your book to be fully illustrated with all 20 plates, we need $10,000. It's a goal. It'll get people to share it. I'm starting off with commissioning 2 right at the bat, just so I have graphics to put on the page, because otherwise, what have I got? I got a book cover, right? you know how it is setting up the Kickstarters for the Robert E. Howard chronology. You've got to show lots of stuff.
Yeah, hadn't even written the books yet, but I was having to create the covers.
Exactly. And at least yours is an art book where you have interiors to show. Mine, not so much. It's here's the actual cover, and we have the book. You want the book? Buy the book.
Yeah.
But now we've got a driver in there to push sales. You want more art? Buy more books.
Yeah, working with the art's a lot of fun.
We'll see how that works. I haven't talked with. I'm going to go through Kablam for this one.
Okay.
The general book is just going to go through England Spark. It'll be available Barnes and Noble and Amazon and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But this special edition one, it's 360 pages. I want to go through Kablam, and I've asked someone to call me this week so we can talk about the logistics of publishing this book, because I'm like, I don't want to edit the PDF because that's a pain to put these art scans in. I would much rather somebody at Kablam say, oh, this gets inserted here, this gets inserted there. And if they can do that, then I'd really like them to be done on slick pages. You know how it is when you have those illustrated books where you're like, it's a page. Oh, this one's a slick page because there's a picture on it. And it's the illustration. Yeah, it makes it stand out a little bit. I don't know how they do that, how they want me to handle getting it to them and explaining it. So hopefully they'll reach out to me this week and let me know what to do. Robert Roberts is out here. He says, hail Lord Xenu and hail Princess Xena, our only true saviors. Of course. And Heroinberg is hailing him back from the Great White North. So it's good to have folks out there in the chat. I bought comics this week, Michael.
Oh, did you? What'd you buy?
It was the first time I'd gone into a comic shop in, I want to say, 2.5 to maybe 3 months, because nothing drew me in. But I had seen some tweets from Dan Panosian doing a book from Boom Studios, and he's got this book, Alice Ever After. And since, my first published book was Alice's Journey Beyond the Moon. So with all the research into that, anytime I see somebody do a book, first I'm interested. And then when I see, the artwork inside of it, as such, I'm like, okay, that's not only, an interesting concept to me, but the artwork is decent and fits the time period. It's not all, it's a good looking book.
Good. Yeah.
So I'm going to be happy to get into that one. And then, of course, while I was there, I wanted to try this out. Haven't read it yet, but Batman 89.
Yeah.
What I found interesting was that it's written by Sam Hamm, who did the script for the movie.
Yeah.
The original movie. So
we'll
see how well it's. He did some comic books at the time. I haven't heard from him since. He did. That
was it.
They brought him on to Detective to do that one arc right at the time of the movie. And I remember it was the killer was using some sort of a subsonic gun, and it was just like pulverizing the bones in a person and leaving them as a jelly pile, breaking all their bones at one time. You couldn't hear it; you could just feel it. And then I never heard from him again. So,
yeah, he just disappeared. That's the first I've heard anybody mention his name in a long, long time.
Yeah, and it just kind of jumped out at me from the comic, like, "Oh, I know this." And then, DC. You've probably seen the solicitations. DC is doing Dark Crisis. Are all your customers hyped up for Dark Crisis?
That's about the reaction. Nobody cares.
Yeah. Well, was it? I think Discovery, which now owns Warner Brothers, which now owns DC. Yeah, they've thrown away the scalpel and they've picked up a pickaxe and a hatchet, and they're cutting away at stuff.
Oh yeah, the big deal coming up next week. The Trinity dies in the last issue of Justice League, and that's going to lead into the Dark Crisis, and
Yeah.
Nobody seems to care.
Nobody seems to care because nobody believes it.
Yeah, exactly. You can't keep pulling the same trick. And you also can't keep baiting and switching people. Hey, this is the marriage between Batman and Catwoman. Wow, everybody, get a wedding cake, celebrate, have extra people for the event. Oh, you really believe this? Come on. So, yeah, maybe when it comes out and, and it actually does happen, and maybe that'll get people a little more interested. But, yeah, it's one of those things like, look, Batman's not going to stay dead. Wonder Woman's not going to stay dead. Superman, I think they may do something with that because they want to create a new kind of Superman with new copyrights where they're not beholden to the old copyright. But there's just no way that come on, they're not going to cancel Batman or replace Batman and Wonder Woman the same thing. Superman, who knows? But it's just nobody's buying it. Nobody's getting excited about it or even caring.
Well, it's funny you bring up Superman. Because I was reading through this, the sort of the previews magazine, I guess, for DC, even though it's not because they're not Diamond anymore, so it's not previews. And they've got the solicit in here for Superman, Son of Kal-El, number 12. And okay, so the entire reason for buying Superman, Son of Kal-El is he's bi. Hey, it's a character who's bi. That's the selling point. Not anything that's happening in the stories. Just he's bi. So
most of my customers said bye.
yeah. He's bi. So all the solicits generally have something about that in there, except this one, kinda. And I read this solicit from Tom Taylor, and it says the first sentence here: Lex Luthor and President Bendix have joined forces to unleash the Gamora Corps. And I'm like, really? How unsubtle can you be? Now, it's spelled a little different, but it reads as though it's pronounced Gamora, as in Sodom and Gomorrah. Like, come on, Tom Taylor. You're pulling our leg with this one now, right? You're not going to actually say that, hey, we got, something named after a biblical event where sodomy was punished with fire from the sky, and your gay Superman is going to come in and fight it. Really?
They want to make comic books for everybody. That's fine, but not everybody wants to read the same thing, and they're like, okay, well, you've got an agenda, so y'all must read this now. And that's what I said. My customer said, bye. It's like, you can't make me read things I don't want to read. And the whole thing about sales is give the customer what they want, and they sure have forgotten that. I'm hoping maybe with Discovery. I mean, they really shook it up with AT&T, took it over. Problem was they just scalped it to the bone, and now with Discovery taking it over, they're who knows what they're going to do. I want to see them getting back to having regular titles, having out on a monthly basis again. That's why Marvel's pulling away from them and leaving them in the dust, because they've got ongoing titles. All right, so Justice League, probably one of their best-selling ongoing titles. All right, last issue, we just killed the main guys. Now you can bring Justice League back, but DC's done that before a long time ago. And now it's Gypsy. That's the only one I can remember. The new group. It's
Gypsy. It was Gypsy, Vibe, Steel, and Vixen.
Yeah, did not sell. I mean, you can't say, okay, well, it's the same overall title, but it's a whole different group. Like, people want to buy what they want to buy. They didn't want to read about the other characters, and you got to develop characters and get people interested in it before they'll start buying it. You can't just say, okay, we're going to take this popular title. Hulk is now Hercules. Marvel tried that, didn't sell. They had to cancel it, and then go back to being Hulk again. And people wanted Hulk. They didn't want Hercules. So I mean, you just got to give people the stuff they want. It's a proven track record, and satisfy the customer. I know it sounds like a strange concept in comic books, but it does work. It's like the best-selling trading cards I ever saw was a set called X-Men Series 2, art by Jim Lee. And if you bought a box, you not only got 2 complete sets. No, wait a minute. I'll take it back. 1 complete set of all the regular cards, and you got 2 complete sets of all the chase cards. People bought multiple boxes of it. I mean, they already had it, but where they were so satisfied, I got to have another. You get people what they want, they're going to buy even more. And you can't decide, okay, well, I'm going to make you have to really dig to get this last of this. Like, no, I'm out. Bye. See you around. You can't frustrate your customers.
Yeah, no, you can't. Speaking of frustrating customers, Robert says he just went through his Kickstarters and Indiegogos and found 6 where the author listed you as being fulfilled and you got nothing. That absolutely sucks, and you should reach out to them and make sure that they know. And if they don't take care of you, you should put them on blast on social media. So one resent your dinosaur trading cards. I remember that. If it's the one I'm thinking of, I'm sure that he would have taken care of you had he known. And the Fandom Menace guy hired a fulfillment guy, not me, wasn't me, who emailed you and 4 outright stiffed you. I've been stiffed on a couple. I'm usually very selective. Sticking to the digital only rule, no exceptions except Starcross Comics and Alterna, who have fulfilled multiple. See, there you go. If you fulfill, you keep customers. So Robert, I don't know if I can interest you in participating in SPQR's Bizarre Adventure, which is my featured thing of the night. This is from Michael Oden, and of course we are doing the fulfillment on this one. So yes, vested interest in seeing this one get as many copies as possible. This is okay. So Michael Oden's got a history degree, and he's telling the story here of Caesar versus Pompey at the crossing of the Rubicon. Mm-hmm. But he's like saying that's the nut of history is there, and then everything else we're making up because it's really a riff on this anime called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and it's an anime with a certain style. And the hero characters have these stands, which is what they're called, which is sort of like these spirit animals or spirit representations that stand behind them and have the extra power. So here you see Caesar. I'm pointing to the screen over here, like you can see that. Here you have Caesar and Pompey and their celestial overpowered stands behind them, getting ready to get in this fight. It looks like all kinds of fun. The people who are huge manga weebs have been getting in on this. So it's, and of course, he's done the Embrace. So he's got some Embrace related things in here. The Embrace, the one we just finished putting out. The link to this I put in the top of the chat. If you want to check it out, this is the one I just love. He's got this Embrace plushie now. And the Embrace is the story of a guy who loses his 5-year-old son. His 5-year-old son is killed. He wants to go on a vengeance spree. And the ghost of his 5-year-old son is the costume that he's wearing. He's empowered by the ghost. And as much as he's wanting vengeance, his son keeps telling him, no, Dad, no, don't go vengeful. Just bring him into justice. So his son keeps reining him back. It's getting a lot of traction. They just added these tiers here with original art in them. I will tell you right now, those pieces of original art reside in this 11 by 18 case where they're being held safe. Because I just took these pictures today for him. So if you want some original artwork, pencils from the Embrace, there's $300 out there. Somebody's already claimed one of them. So fantastic. There's only 2 left. But people are going here instead of, to brick and mortar a lot now. Yeah. And that stuff's not being made, for us. It's like when you have done any Kickstarters, all of which have fulfilled, most of them early. My Robert Howard chronology, they kind of messed up, and I said, well, here's where I want to try to have them written by, and they put that as the fulfillment date. I was like, guys, what are you doing? I told you I was going to maybe have it written by then, not edited and printed, and So they kind of we giving people updates, say here's what's going on. This is still in the works, and it's just one of those things. You got to be reliable, and it's just. But on all mine, I'd always push to have a level for retailers where they could buy multiple copies at a really good discount rate to make it worth their time. And some of them did work. It's like my Edgar Rice Burroughs art chronology. They were shipping them by the skid loads to some retailers. Nice. Yeah. Well, maybe I hope the same thing happens for the Robert E. Howard chronology when that goes out. We actually sold more, but I don't think that many retailers jumped on this one like they did the Burroughs one, which was strange. But like I said, we had more sales, so it's and it's going to do well as time goes on. It's like my Bud Plant, who's been doing like art catalogs of fine art for the comic book industry since the 70s, and he cover featured my chronology, as his feature item of the month, and said this gave it his highest review, and really just he's one of the guys who got several skid loads. Did well with it. Very cool. Yeah, the updates on a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo are so important. We did a video, oh gosh, I want to say it was almost a year ago about, how to handle, late books and things like that. And I said, update regularly. I said, update once a week, even if your update says I have nothing new to report. Because here's what happens. You do that 3 times in a row, even you will get sick of your own updates and you will make something happen so that you can write something different. Yeah. It's like, I went out and bought Geminis today just so that I can say we're ready to ship or something like that. But, you'll do something to get some forward momentum. Yeah. Herrenberg brings this up, and I had seen this in passing. I'd seen a panel. Now, I don't know if this was like the cliffhanger panel and, next issue, someone's going to swoop in to save her. But I guess Moira McTaggart from X-Men is a bad person now. Is an evil person. It's X-Men. They're all villains now, Michael. That's the only thing I can figure out. Just the way they act, the way they treat everybody else. They're all villains. But she had Mary Jane Watson and had her at a disadvantage and basically said, when you wake up, I'll be wearing you. She's going to go full Buffalo Bill on him.
Well,
on her.
She's psychic, so she could probably get inside her head. But
yeah, well, she's almost cybernetic now. She's got this cyborg-looking body, which needs skin suit over it to make it look real. Gotcha. So it could be, we're saying goodbye to Mary Jane again because
they'll clone her and then cut off the clone skin.
Oh God, no! Don't go cloning Mary Jane.
They've already cloned Gwen Stacy. I mean, that's just kind of like a standard almost for Spider-Man girlfriends there. Oh, hey, one thing I was going to say on that Kickstarter or the Indiegogo you were just talking about when you made the comment of crossing the Rubicon.
Yes.
One thing I found is that in my stores is things that, like, you and I were an older generation. There were things we were taught they just don't teach anymore. And there may be a lot of your viewers who don't know what that phrase means. And so I've learned that I've had to actually do supplemental history whenever I be in my stores to talk about things like, well, you don't, that's just everything's right over their head. And crossing the Rubicon refers to when Caesar was coming back from the Gallic Wars. And, he was, had his army marching with him. Well, the rule was that no general could ever march his army past the Rubicon. That was, no, that's because now you're coming into the actual province of Rome, but he was having problems with all the senators. And he just said, to heck with it, just marched right across that Rubicon. And then basically became emperor. And
it was seen as an invasion.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why they stabbed him to death later. And Pompeo, he's the one who was gotten into a lot of fighting with, Mark Antony and chased him to the ground over in Egypt. So those are some pretty big names in Roman history. But that crossing Rubicon means cross the line. That if you pass this, there's no going back.
Yeah, and I think that goes hand in hand with the phrase "the die is cast."
And unring that bell.
Yeah, because what isn't that what Caesar purportedly said when he crossed the Rubicon? Says the die is cast. We've thrown the dice. Whatever comes up, comes up. So.
Yeah, it's just it meant this is something that you can't change and then go back. First time a political correct Dynamite comic. Native American
I guess there's a YA novel that Dynamite's doing about a Native American teenage girl. I have not checked out this one yet, so I'll check out. It's on Comics Beat. So
the young adult market was something I always wanted them to pursue more, and even the kids market. Whenever Marvel or DC tried to make a kids market, they talk down like, okay, well, you're not very smart. Kids are smart. It's like I kept trying to tell them the formula for making comics. I probably mentioned this before. Do you want me to say it again? So I was watching an episode of called Adventures in Time and Space. It was a documentary about the making of Doctor Who. And in there, the BBC programming director explained to the producer of Doctor Who that the formula for kids programming, and this is really the formula for comics too, is that for making programming for kids, you got to keep it dumb enough where you don't confuse the adults, but clever enough to keep the kids interested. See, here in America, we go the opposite way. We give the adults the complicated stuff, and the kids the dumbed down stuff. And they're like, I'm out of here. Because
the kids like figuring things out. I mean, that's why the first Harry Potter books, the first 2 at least, and and then they got away from this because the audience was getting older. There were puzzles to be figured out there. There were chess games, and there were riddles.
Challenge the reader. Yeah,
it did, and she got away from that because audience hooked. Now let's just move on to the simpler stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things, that everybody's always like, that's one of the criticisms I got about Wild Stars. Like, oh, you got to think, you got to keep track because things will come back later. Things that you read now will be important later in the story. And, what like one review said, it's not just all battle, the end. I had a story. If I'm going to have a fight, there's something being accomplished in that fight. And, it's like when I was working with my artists, and they were like, well, we're used to the Marvel way, where it says Spider-Man and Hulk fight for 6 pages, and we just make it up. I was like, look, if I got a 6-page fight, there's something going on that's happened on each one of those pages that's integral to the story. I'm not just, okay, give me 6 pages of filler. I just don't write that kind of stuff. And but that's one of the things people like about my writing. And, they're like, oh, wow. Then this all comes back later and it makes sense. And, I reward them for paying attention. So people like that. It's, they don't, want to be talked down. And it kind of reminds me of when I think it was Neil Gaiman talking about having a conversation with another writer in the industry, and they're like, man, why do you put so much work and content into your stories? And he goes, well, all my stuff's still in print.
Yeah.
The other guy's like, well, I'm hacking 5 books a month, and yeah, but Neil's still getting paid for his years later. Or the other guy, 5 books a month, they print them one time, they're done. Nobody, no demand for it later because he didn't put any effort into it.
Exactly. When a reader gets to the end of the book and finds out that there's stuff that fed into the end that they didn't realize was feeding into the end, first of all, they'll reread the book. Mm-hmm. Second of all, they'll talk about it.
Right.
And when a reader's talking about a book, they're advertising the book for free.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like my Wild Stars, when I collected all the comics together in a big graphic novel. And, I had a plan all along. It all fit together. I tried to make each issue like its own little separate story. When you put them all together, then you got a bigger overall story. And, people are always like, man, once I got to the end, all of a sudden there's all these other things going on. I didn't realize it were there, went back and read it again. I got a whole other story, which is why I titled it The Book of Circles. Because you go back, read it again, you'll see things you didn't see the first time. And I had one guy read it like 5 times. I could still show him stuff he missed. And I had some stuff buried in there that nobody was ever going to get unless I told them. It's like basically I framed it all in the form of a football game. It begins with the pregame talk, begins with a whistle, ends with a gunshot by a man wearing a striped shirt, and then goes into a sudden death overtime. And, another thing, too, is also called it the time travel twice told, because it's a time travel story. So I tell it in long form the first time, and then I repeat it real quick. And once again, so you can get the formula, on the sudden death overtime.
Yeah, it's that's a lot of. So how much?
And it's
summary.
Print today. Stuff I'm publishing back in 1984. Publish it.
So did you design this on paper before you wrote it?
What's that?
Did you design this on paper before you sat down to write it? I mean, did you do the executive summary and say, yes, this has got to tie here, this has got to come down to here, now write it this way?
Well, actually, it was a combination of 2 novels. It's a novel I wrote back in 1978 called First Marker, and that was like the first couple of comics. And then the 2002 comics was another novel I wrote called Under the Wild Stars back in the 90s. And it does kind of have a fourth down, but not actually. But it's and I'll tell you what, it pops. How the game gets more exciting as it gets. I really picked up the pace and really got the story moving. The first year I was just taking my time with everything that was going on, building everything. Don't want to just race past the readers. Once everything's established, then things start happening page after page after page. And so it just, it accelerates the pace as the story goes on as you come rapidly to the end. And, I definitely reward people with their reading. And like I said, there's things buried down in there. And it's like, I'm still dropping Easter eggs that I didn't realize what was going on there. Yeah, that was those guys without their hats on. That you always saw with their hats in every scene, but that's them in the background, no hats. And
I remember some of the stuff you were including there was informed by real life events that you'd been around for. I can't remember what issue it was, but there was the issue where the police found a pot field and they burned it, and the town was downwind.
Now I gave it an extra twist, because what happened when the police burned the pot field, they set the whole thing on fire at one time. So all the traffic just stood downwind. We're just standing here. And this clouds of smoke rolled over. Well, they couldn't, they weren't doing anything wrong. And I added the extra element of the field. They're going to burn it, but they're going to do a controlled burn. Then this other element of the story happened where a mine explosion sets the whole field on fire. And it's real close to where there's a polling station for election day, because this was an election stunt. There's a competition between a police and a sheriff. They were both vying for the sheriff's job. And so the whole field gets set on fire. And the clouds of smoke go washing over the crowds of voters standing in line going, man, a guy could make a fortune, put a snack stand out here. So just having fun with that. Another element.
The whole town got high.
Yeah. And of course, that's, hey, you can't, that's kind of like offering people drinks. That's electioneering. Yeah, so that's a controversy right there. And there are other controversies going on that election day. So, that was based on something else where, I had there's so many things in there. I mean, it's like there was a case where a printer, they were also printing men's magazine and also newspapers. And somehow the centerfolds ended up in the newspaper one day. And then another thing, and this is based on a printing plant that I worked at. We had some guys break into it over the weekend, and they burglarized the welding shop next door. And so they hauled all this heavy welding equipment over there, took it inside the place, and they had this huge double door safe. And I guess they thought, oh man, we're going to hit the jackpot here. It was a printing company. There was no money kept in it. There were, paper clips, women's tampons, just nothing in there. And the desk that they set all their equipment on had a cash box in the drawer with several $100s. They could have popped that with a screwdriver and they would, gotten the money. But instead, they spent all the time blowtorching the whole weekend to cut through this gigantic double door safe, thinking, oh man, there's big gyms or something in here. And they could make good money, put that kind of effort into an honest job. But so that was something else I worked in this story based on true story. Another one element of that story I kind of worked into was a ghost story element of it to kind of give it a little bit extra flavor. But this really happened here in Arkansas. There was a woman who shot a man dead on a parking lot. When the police said, well, ma'am, why did you shoot him? She goes, well, he was scaring me. Like, I don't know what's the proper excuse to shoot a man dead. Well, then the prosecuting attorney got the autopsy back, and this guy, they couldn't count how many times he'd been shot. But they knew there were at least 10 different bullets from 10 different guns still in his body.
Oh, geez.
And they're like, this guy probably was scary. Yeah, and he was obviously a bad dude. So they didn't put it with any charges. But, so I had that element that kind of threw a little bit of a ghost story in there with it too. But there's all these great things in life you can throw in and add to them, and just to kind of give it extra flavor. And life is a lot stranger. Truth is stranger than fiction because fiction has to make sense. Yeah, there's another element in there too where a guy, a hitman comes down from Chicago to the southern town and basically shoots the wrong guy because he had a similar name to another guy. That really happened. And, just all these things, that you just think you're making up this wild stuff, but life's full of a lot of crazy things.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Robert says that their local volunteer fire department burned pot fields, and they always had thermoses full of pot at lunch. Just fill it up. Just grab handfuls of it. It's funny. I was I listened to a lot of old time radio, and I guess there was a Jace Pearson of the Texas Rangers episode on yesterday, and it was all about this guy had a pot field out in the Arizona desert. And, it's like, nothing grows out there except a weed. And that's what marijuana is. It's a weed. And the guy's partner was like, just jonesing for a joint. He's like, you got to give me something. I need the marijuana. And I'm like, well, will you shoot this guy? Yeah, I'll kill this guy for you. You just got to hit me up. Like, this guy wasn't on crack. He was on marijuana.
Yeah, they must have seen that Reefer Madness movie.
Yeah, they really played up,
that's crazy.
The gateway drug and how it would drive you insane. Like, I've known my share of pot smokers in life, and usually they can't be bothered to kill anybody or do anything else. They're like, yeah, man, whatever, dude.
And the wildest thing a pothead ever wants to do is like, hey, man, let's put some butter on the popcorn. Wow, radical.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not driving crazy, running people down or raping women like they were in that Reefer Madness. Now, the story behind the Reefer Madness, do you know the background of that movie?
I have not even seen the movie. I'm just aware of it. And I know it was like overblown and over the top and stuff.
Yeah. And I actually had an employee who was into stage, as an actor. And he went up to Chicago to pursue his acting career. But, he did a local rendition of Reefer Madness. And so I went down to see the play. And I'd seen the movie way back as a kid, and I saw it as a play here recently. But basically, Reefer Madness was okay. Are you familiar with Rosebud?
That was the name of Hearst's sled.
Kane.
Yeah,
Citizen Kane was based on Randolph Hearst because he had owned all these printing presses, and he was a big name. And that's why he ruined Orson Welles' career, because he said that's about me, and he didn't like it. Well, Randolph Hearst had all those newspapers. He bought all these forests with paper, and he wanted his forest to be more valuable. And so there was a great alternative for printing paper: hemp. It's what the Constitution was written on. It's what ropes were made of. Yeah. It's completely non-psychedelic, but its cousin is marijuana. And so by getting marijuana deemed a class 1 right up there with cocaine and heroin, that meant anything even related to it was illegal in America, including hemp. So he made a hemp paper. I mean, it's the best paper. You can print it. Comics would probably cost half what they do now. Now it's cheaper to build a building out of steel than it is out of wood. I mean, it's insane how expensive wood's gotten. And that all goes back. This was the plan by Randolph Hearst. And that's one of the reasons why marijuana, they went after that, was to get hemp outlawed. And they finally overturned that. Hemp could replace everything. All your plastics, hemp could replace it. It's biodegradable. It would solve so many ecological problems. But Hearst wanted his forest to be valuable, and he got what he wanted. His paper mills and his paper, is worth gold now. And so that was why he had all his editorial staffs writing all these different, stories about demonizing it and how terrible it is, and just completely ignoring the whole medicinal side of it. And I mean, there's just it was just about the money, follow the money, and it was a money grab, and it worked.
Robert says the same name happened to a pair of mob hitmen from Montreal who went to New York in a family war. I'm sure it's happened more than once. I mean, go kill Bob Jones for me. Oh, okay. Yeah. Where does he live? he lives with the Joneses in Jonesboro. Is this the Hearst conspiracy theory?
Something like that happened to me one time when I was up in Kansas to a funeral, and I was staying in a hotel, and I get a call. I'm like, "Hey, yeah, it's me. It's one of Henry's boys." I'm like, "Okay, you can call me by name," and the switchboard just connected him up too, because he called looking for Michael Tierney. And he's like, "Yeah, one of Henry's boys." I'm like, "Wait a minute, I thought Henry only had girls." But he's like, "Michael Tierney from Arkansas, right?" "Yeah." And finally he kept going enough to, no, he was looking for a Michael Tierney, I think, from Russellville, Arkansas, in a little town in Kansas. That same weekend, he was there for a bowling tournament, which kind of ironically, that's what the thing was in the I put in the story, was a bowling tournament. So that actually happened to me. And it took us a while to figure out, okay, I'm the wrong Michael Tierney. I'm not the guy you're looking for, because the cousin Henry, he had all girls.
I knew a guy who his name was Mike Smith. I mean, you want to talk about as generic as you can get. And he was from Arkansas, and there was a guy named Mike Smith in Arizona. And you know how often people get AR and AR mixed up. It's not. It's AZ for Arizona people. Uh-huh. They had the same social security number. And it was causing him problems because they had the same birth date. Wow. And somehow somebody, I'm sure the Arizona guy, or probably more than likely the Arizona guy, they entered it AR because they're just typing along, and boom, social security number. So my friend Mike, he goes to the Social Security office. He says, "Look, I've researched this. I found this out. Here's this other guy. He lives here in Arizona. He's got the same social security number as me. I need a new social security number." And he said the lady spent about 5 minutes explaining how it is absolutely impossible for another person to end up with the same social security number than you. It's just not done. There's too many safeguards. Fill out this piece of paper to fix it. And he's like, "So you're telling me that this impossible thing that cannot happen, you have a piece of paper in arm's reach to fix this problem that doesn't exist?"
Yeah.
Yes. So he's like, "Okay, fine." And he got his new social number. But
well, that's crazy. Yeah, it's just amazing some of the things that'll happen sometimes. It just defies and beggars the imagination there.
Yeah, absolutely. So what else what are your customers excited about that's coming? Anything? Or are they just kind of like collecting because it's a habit?
I mean, well, there's some customers who just love the hobby and they call it the good stuff, it's.
What's the good stuff?
Well, that's the whole thing. It's just, they want to keep getting their books on a regular basis when we come out. The problem is they're stopping all the titles. I mean, it's like we're going over to miniseries after miniseries. DC hardly makes anything ongoing anymore. Marvel, that's why they're doing better, because they've got a lot more ongoing series. But then they keep restarting everything. I mean, it's just it's the most self-destructive thing I've ever seen. And then this whole social agenda that they keep trying to push on people, like, just give me a good story, a fun story, and don't preach to me. I still lose customers from time to time because they don't like the direction comics are going. If anybody quits the hobby, it's because of the axe grinding going on to fulfill somebody's agenda by, here's what I think you should be reading, here's what I think. No, give me what I've always bought before. I'm not going to buy this. And it's detrimental.
There is a title that DC's doing right now, and I almost picked it up, and I put it down, and I've been told, get over yourself and go pick it up. I picked it up, and the colorist was a person that has rubbed me the wrong way online before, and I'm like, no, I'm not rewarding bad behavior. But Mark Waid is the writer, and it's DC's World's Finest, Batman and Superman World's Finest. It's on its second issue right now, and I'm hearing nothing but good things about this, as far as, fast-moving story, lots of story items picked in there, not decompressed at all. It's got humor, it's got action, it's got Batman and Superman, but it's also, like, within one issue, you've got Robin and Supergirl and the Doom Patrol and all these other, Wonder Woman, just the entire universe here, but it's still a Batman Superman story.
That's when comics were really kicking it. Was when you got a whole story, a beginning, a middle, and an end. Not just, okay, here's the opening, here's a middle chapter, here's another middle chapter. All right, now we're getting up close to the end. Okay, now we'll give you the conclusion of the story. When you bought a comic, you got a whole story. And the clever ones, you built them together, you put them all together in blocks and made an even bigger story. But you still got a whole story with every issue.
And I don't know if they're doing that at that level yet, like getting a whole story per issue, but at least the story that they're telling, it's got people talking about it as saying, hey, DC, more of this, get back to this. This is and I think, having seen the artwork, and I'll look through here and see if they got a solicit for it, but I think they've even got Batman with the yellow oval on the cape, which really sets it in the Silver Age.
I always thought Frank Miller in his Dark Knight Returns had a good explanation for the yellow oval.
Oh, yeah, it's Target.
Yeah.
Aim here.
Give him some place to aim that I can armor. I can't armor my head.
Exactly. And I remember people extrapolated that out further. They're like, yeah, he put the yellow here because it draws attention. You shoot at the yellow. And then that's why he gave Robin a yellow cape. Shoot at the running yellow thing, and then I can sneak up in the shadows. And I can always get another Robin.
That whole yellow cape and Robin. I saw a good cartoon in the paper today. I think it was called the Argyle Sweater. And it's got Aquaman with his girlfriend. Obviously, it's not Mirror or anything like that, but it's just another regular girlfriend. And he's pulling out this dress out of a closet going, look, I don't care how heavy it is. Lois and Clark are coming over tonight, and you're wearing the lead dress.
Oh, God. Yeah, you got to protect your girl from the prying eyes.
Of course, she's got her arms crossed. I don't want to. That was a clever one. Comics are part of mainstream culture. I mean, we're everywhere now. I remember used to, when I opened up near 40 years ago, because I'll have my 40th anniversary this September when I opened up my first location. I remember people were like embarrassed to say they collected comics. It wasn't cool. Like, oh, I'm an adult, but I read comics. People were like, they're almost ashamed of it. And I remember
what's wrong with you?
One time I had a captain of the Air Force in buying his comics. And all of a sudden, he runs from the counter, goes over to the corner and starts crouching down. I'm thinking, this is very odd behavior. Well, in walks another captain with his uniform and all this and that. He walks up to get his comics for that week. Well, the other guy pops up like Jack in the Box. Aha, you collect comics. And, well, these two guys, turned out they worked next to each other. Their desks were side by side, and they had no clue that they were both comic collectors. Well, after that point, collecting comics was cool because they weren't the only one. But now comics are so mainstream. I mean, tell me what's the deal with so and so and so and so? Give me the skinny, the background on it. So comics have gotten mainstream. It's nice, and you should see it everywhere. We're in all sorts of forms of fiction.
It's almost a shame though that it is. I mean, we've always wanted it to be recognized and respected, But now that like everybody's in it, and I think maybe the Marvel Universe movies had something to do with that. It's like it became very mainstream because now it's like it's mainstream. Make them for me, and you know, and to make it for me, I don't like this thing that you're doing with these characters. I don't like this thing that you're the way you're dressing them. I don't like the way they're acting. I don't see any representation for myself. And Marvel is like, you know, we just made a few $1 billion off this movie. Okay, let's placate this audience that's not really buying the comics. If we're being honest about it. And they're totally driving away the niche nerd culture that built up their empires. Like, we're the ones buying the comics. Why are you taking away our stories?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, you know, I had a lot of kids shopping with me early on because, you know, comics are all ages. Anybody of any age could read it. And I will say that one thing that they used to do back then, they're finally starting to do again, is that if you want to have cuss words, pound, @ exclamation mark, you know, just let people fill it in themselves because not everybody cusses the same way. You know, these guys, you know, I always wondered when they finally started putting bad language into comics, how come they had everybody talking with the exact same speech patterns? It was like a Kevin Smith movie. Everybody talked about Kevin Smith except Kevin Smith because he didn't talk. And you know, now they just go back and let people fill in the blanks. So now it's acceptable to kids anymore. You're going to have people, okay, they're cursing at it. That fits the character, but it's not, you know, where you're actually reading the word. Now I got to be careful who I sell it to. And so, you know, I had lots of kids shop with me, had lots of adults shopping with me. And a lot of the adults, most of them were military men and police enforcement because they really identified with Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. When I closed my store, I didn't have a single guy in the military or police force. They were all gone.
They were all chased away by the industry.
What's that?
They were all chased away by the industry because the industry was telling, you know, the military that you kill babies, and the police were, you know, all cops are bees.
That's actually what one of my customers who was a diehard DC fan, he says he just got tired of being told by DC that he was a baby killer. And you know, I remember they used to. This was actually a good thing, but they did it in a bad way. They were doing a appreciation comic, free comic to the military every year, and you know, I'm out by a major Air Force base, so I'd have them, you know, they bring samples of them to give to me. And the last one I remember them making was a Brian Bendis story about a Kree warship had crashed on Earth so long ago, it was millions of years ago, rock formed around it. So then they start breaking into the rock. Well, the Kree come out and they start shooting, and the military's there to stop, so they start shooting back and forth, and the Avengers show up. And the lesson was to the military's like, you're just trigger happy. You just don't shoot at everything first. If you talk, you can solve some problems. What kind of message is that telling the military that they're trigger happy? They're there to protect
who got shot at.
Yeah, they're a front line to put their lives at risk for you, and you're telling them like, hey, you're just out of control. That was a good message. Nobody liked it. They didn't make another appreciation book after that either.
No. Harrenberg says that at one point World's Finest was actually Huntress and Power Girl. Yeah, there was an era where the World's Finest comic was Huntress and Power Girl, which was originally Robin and Supergirl of Earth 2, which is why the title was World's apostrophe, not World apostrophe S Finest. Very subtle difference and distinction in the title there. I loved that whole thing. That was early in the New 52, I believe. Went away when they started trying to do different things with the New 52, and I don't know, it was a fun book while it lasted. That's why I keep the back issues. I can always return and read the fun books over and over again. I don't have to keep buying new stuff.
Great thing about having a big back issue selection is I sold, you know, as the new comic sales cratered, I was selling a ton of back issues because people go back and read the stuff they like, the stuff that told the stories they wanted to read. And that's one of the things that's really powered back issue sales. I mean, stuff I'm selling on eBay right now, I can't believe it. I'm actually able to sell some of the 90s comics for some money. I've never thought the 90s would ever be worth any money.
I stopped in a vintage stock because I was selling some DVDs, and I was like, I just happened to go in. Cause they sell, you know, old movies and you know, tons of anime. I mean, it was just statues of stuff everywhere. But they had their long boxes. They had dollar comics, buy one get one. So I'm like, so these are 50-cent comics.
Yeah.
And I you know, I picked up remember CrossGen?
Yeah, they were great.
Yeah, they were great books. It just
they had a bad business plan.
Yeah, bad business plan, and it fell apart. Black Flag, got some Dan Fraga stuff here. Got Black Flag number 3 from Maximum Press for $1. for 50 cents. 50 cents, mind you.
Yeah.
And the thing about the 80s and the 90s was like you never knew what you were going to get. There was just who is this Grath X Press? Equine and Civilized. I'm like, yeah, it's horses. It's Conan horses. It's always parody.
Vintage stock. That started out as a place called the Barn Door, I believe, and it was just a used bookstore. They'd write a nickel on all their comics and just sell them really cheap. I bought a lot of stuff there, and then they got a guy who went to work for them, and he ended up buying the business because he couldn't get them to listen to him. Like, look, we could actually build something out of this, and they finally just sold it to him, and he did. He did very well with it and built it into a franchise, and just realized that there is a lot of demand for comics if they're marketed right.
Yeah, there's a franchise out there. There's a chain store out there that I wish would come closer to the Midwest. I think the closest one to us is Indiana, called Ollie's Outlet. And it's just like everything goes every clearance. Thing is that Marvel and DC dump their graphic novels there. All the stuff that can't be printed. And it's like the E.T. pit of Atari games. I see stuff all the time. Like, I just got like this, 800-page omnibus for $1.50.
Yeah.
I'm making it up, but it's literally very, very cheap. It's almost worth the drive for me to go out and just, load up the trunk and the stuff I want to read. Get all that stuff. Yeah. Dan will be very happy to see what a book by him brings in now. Yes, it was 50 cents. I probably could have bought more issues of Black Flag. Dan Frege, of course, is doing books in the crowdfunding market these days, working with Ethan Van Sciver and other guys.
That was the time when the print runs were so overinflated.
Oh yeah, they were. Print 1 million of them. We'll sell 1/10 of them. But I got some Mike Barron next here. I bought this one because it was Nexus and Badger in the same book. So I'd never seen the guys crossed over before. And then you remember the Tick was so popular that he started getting spin-off books like Paul the Samurai.
That's where there was a cartoon series, and then they went to live action.
Oh yeah, twice they went to live action. What else here? Okay, I got another Badger book. I always pick up Badger by Mike Barron if I can. Not that he's getting any more royalties off of it, but and then of course, I've always been a sucker for. You remember the Brave and the Bold series, man?
Oh yeah.
It was always Batman and another character, and
it was like Marvel Team Up.
Marvel Team Up, and you probably know this because they didn't have previews then, so you didn't know what was coming out 3 months in advance. You barely knew what was coming out the next month. But with Brave and the Bold, they wouldn't tell you at the end of the book, come back next month when it's Batman and Superman or Batman and the Spectre, but there'd be like an Easter egg in the story somewhere that would be a hint. And it was like there's one I know where like Batman and his guest star were walking out of an alley, and there was a trash can, there was stuff hanging out of the trash can, and there was a green arrow sticking up out of the trash can. It's like, next month it's going to be Green Arrow, and it was. You'd see a shadow shaped like something. So it was always leading forward. It made it fun to read because you're like, I'm reading it, but I'm also looking for something.
Well, that's the key right there. You're having fun.
Yeah.
And it gets
and then of course the most fun series I've ever enjoyed in my entire comics reading life, outside of New Teen Titans, was always Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. Even before Teen Titans, I was like, Element Lad, stop! Don't kill this guy. You'll be expelled from the Legion. I'm like, yeah, and thrown in prison, Mike, likely too. It's like, never mind expelled from the Legion. You killed somebody. You go to jail for that.
Yeah. When I opened up back in 82, it's amazing how different things were back then. Legion was a top-selling book. Yeah. Then came the Keith Giffen run where, okay, we're going to go away with all their superhero names, and we're going to go with the real names, which obviously nobody put any thought or effort into it, and they were gibberish, and or they were inside jokes, like Matter Eater Lad was from the planet Bismol, as in Pepto, and just things like that. And then nobody knew what the heck was going on, and it never recovered from that.
And then Ultra Boy was who got his powers by being swallowed by a space whale. His name was Joe Na.
Yeah, exactly. And so they were just it killed it. And I remember Teen Titans was just monster, and when George Perez left the book, it just didn't make it. Of course, they also tried to take it, the prestige and newsstand format. Do you remember that experiment? Because the
Yes.
direct sale market was just coming along, so they had the idea. Okay, we're going to do a prestige version, and then a year later we'll reprint those on the cheaper format.
That's what they did with New Teen Titans. That's how they began.
Yeah, and that was why they had the new Teen Titans. Right, exactly. And but then about the time they got time to do it, and everybody's like, no, we just want to read the news stories, and it was a failed experiment. But they just didn't know what to do with the direct sale market back then. But it gave them the opportunities to do things that they couldn't do any other time, and great opportunities. But then the good thing and the bad thing that happened as a result of stores like mine was that they realized they'd been ignoring the older audience, and because there was a market for comics that are a little bit more mature than the all ages stuff. That's when you started getting the Watchmen, Dark Knight Returns. Problem with that was they just the pendulum went all ages. Okay, now all the way to the other way. Okay, now it's all adults only, and they completely ignored the kid market, which is where you got your next generation of readers from. Yeah, and I remember they used to try to say, "Oh, kids don't want to read comics anymore; they want to play video games." That was bogus. I mean, there was always the demand there. I mean, look what Finding Nemo did at the theaters and things like that. If there was a Finding Nemo comic, it would have sold like that if it was done right. And I used to do a talk every year at the local university called Summer Lorette University for Youth. It was for the gifted and talented, and I was the only guy that had come back every year. Everybody else had rotate, like wouldn't have to do more 1 or 2 years. They had me doing it every single time, because what happened was when I first opened up my stores, I had to get into it with some of the local teachers because they had the stigma that comic books were bad reading for you. Teachers were actually telling parents, don't let him read comics anymore. It's ruining his education. It's making it where he's not, just not reading the right kind of reading. And finally, they started realizing, actually, comics is one of the best forms of reading out there if you want a kid to learn to absorb information, because you're using the one side of your brain that, does like the numbers, this and that, the written word, and you do use the other side of your brain that does visualization, and you're teaching them to work in tandem, which is what Einstein, that was why he was a genius. His two hemispheres were just very connected. And so comics, creates that connection. And I remember there was one time a teacher said, had a kid, they were trying to decide, should they send him to special education? Maybe he wasn't that bright, wasn't as smart as the other kids in regular school. Well, then the teacher said, well, try getting him reading some comics, just get him reading something. Bam, within a year or two, they were sending him off to a special class, but it was for gifted and talented, because they realized the kid wasn't dumb. He just wasn't, engaged, wasn't challenged.
He was bored.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so once they realized that comics were good for kids to read, I was a guest every year. And, one of the things I do is I'd gather up a whole bunch of comics. Well, I couldn't take my own stuff out there to the campus, so they'd have to have some assistant come out there and meet me at my vehicle, and they'd load up that wagon with all these free comics. Tell you what, you want to see how much kids like comics? Try dragging a wagon load of free comics in front of a couple hundred kids and watch what happens. You think piranha frenzy. Oh my God.
Yeah, I was I learned to read off of comic books. I was reading comic books at 4 years old. This is pre-kindergarten. Because I was growing up in Sparta, Illinois, where they printed all of them. So you could find them. You could find them free. You go to the barber shop. He's got it stacked, there. And I would, say, can I take this home when I'm done? And I would, and I still remember the first comic book I had was a Superman issue. I think it was 183. He's grabbing onto the U in his own name, and he's telling the reader, save me or you're next. And his body's being stretched into the core of the earth, which was behind him. But it wasn't until I didn't know that people couldn't read. I didn't realize what things. So I'm in first grade, and we're reading all this basic monosyllabic words. And there was this day when she's, my first grade teacher's holding up these big placards, and she reading, the thing, a big picture up there and then big bold words underneath. And I'm like, and I've read it, so I'm exploring the bug on the floor or checking to see what's on the bottom of my shoe or picking my nose or whatever. And next thing I know, she's in front of me. She's like, would you like to read to the class? Because, not paying attention. Let's embarrass the kid who's obviously fidgeting. And I just looked up and said, plants make energy through a process called photosynthesis, in which they absorb sunlight and put it through. I was like, boom, next reading, because, I had already read the thing. I was like, well, yeah, because, the Flash fought the Floronic Man last month, and that's exactly what, he was doing. And by the way, don't get me started on letting matter and antimatter touch each other, because you'll get a big explosion.
Yeah, you're just so far
I was picking up science, fiction,
They
science.
had writers like Gardner Fox writing comics back then. He was a big name writer. John Jakes. Just there's been a lot of people who've written comics that they weren't dummies and they weren't writing down to kids like the comics that you've gotten. More recently, they finally realized, hey, there's a market out there. Like, yeah, I've only been screaming it for decades. Please listen to me. I remember every time I'd write a market report for Overstreet, I was always pitching, hey, we got to take care of the kids. The kids, there's a people here who want to buy this stuff. Now that I don't have my storefront anymore, now they finally start making the product. Thank you.
Yeah. You want to write for kids? Write the story you wrote. Go in and take out all the curse words. Go in and take out all the sex scenes. Now it's for kids. You didn't have to create, Chibis or Tiny Toons or Teeny Toons, Teeny Titans. Yeah. You didn't have to make a Scooby-Doo Mysteries. You just made a superhero story that wasn't offensive to, children.
Just insert the pound
or the parents.
Exclamation mark for your curse word and just be a little suggestive in your sexual scenes because that was there. Yeah. Those were in the comics we read. And, if you're too immature,
I read Warlord.
Right over your head.
I used to, read Warlord, and I'd ask my dad, I was like, man, Dad, what makes you wonder what makes those costumes stay on? And I'll never forget. He said, ink. The ink holds them on. I was like,
there used to be this one magazine, or actually it was a newspaper, and then it later became a magazine called The Comic Buyer's Guide. I ended up writing a lot of articles for it. And, they had a cartoon in there one time that was pretty good. And I'd show the cartoon customers in my store, and nobody got it. What it was, Jim Shooter was still editor of Marvel, and you have a superhero and a superheroine standing in front of him, and he keeps going, no, this is the new universe, NEW, the new universe. And nobody got the joke. I said, look at the superhero and the girl. They don't have any lines at their neck or wrist. They're naked. They're for the nude universe.
Oh, jeez.
People look at it, they did not get the joke.
Oh, that sounds like a Fred Hembeck joke, but he would have probably not drawn that.
No, he didn't. That was somebody else.
Yeah, I used to have a subscription to the CBG. I missed that because I would skip over certain articles because they were my favorite, and it was like dessert. I wanted to end my reading experience with these articles.
Yeah,
and it was like Bob Ingersoll did The Law as an Ass, where he would take legal analysis of superhero stories. Often Daredevil, because Daredevil was a lawyer. And then I would end it with Peter David's But I Digress. And I think the best But I Digress that I remember came out right after the Aladdin cartoon. And he had this great drawing accompanying it of Snow White standing there with Ariel, Belle, and Jasmine sitting at a table, and she's trying to induct them into the Disney Princess Society, and they're all fighting with each other about how dumb they are, or how offensive they might be. And I remember Belle telling Ariel, "It's like, oh yeah, you have trouble with words like fire and walk, big words." It was funny when you read it. You have to find it again.
Yeah.
But I miss that kind of stuff. We don't have all we have. What reports on comics that's not saying buy this? It's the best thing.
That all started with Wizard.
Yeah,
and,
they did.
And they had some good stuff in there. I remember they basically what's that Robot Chicken? They're kind of doing like a Robot Chicken with action figures. And
they did it with Toy Fair.
What's that?
They did that with Toy Fair when they spun that off.
Yeah, and that spun off, and then did that over there, and so they had some humor stuff in there, and but they were always overhyping things, and they just made stuff up. I used to have people come in competition to me, and they used Wizard as their guide. Well, they were doomed because Wizard would say, well, Seamus, his mother had an online store, so whatever she had a lot of, that's the hottest thing out there. There would be a book I couldn't hang on to. It was the hottest thing around. Oh, that's not worth anything. It's whatever she had the stock on, that's what was worth it for them. So all the information they got was bad. And so all these guys would be buying my junk, thinking, I want a quarter of the market on this stuff. I want to grab everything he's got. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's fine. And I got more in the back anyway. And I actually made a lot of good money off of that by just getting rid of my junk because they were following Wizard, but they weren't selling the right stuff. And so they just bought it all and got stuck. I remember the worst one was there was a guy, he thought, oh, wait a minute, you got this issue of previews that's going to have a little comic section in it. of the first one of it was one of Jim Shooter left Marvel, and he did like a bunch of series called Dark Dominion and different things like this and that. And so there was like a preview comic to one of his new comics with his publisher, long gone. I can't even remember the name of it because it was off gone like that. I mean, it just didn't last at all. He bought literally a truckload of those previews thinking he's going to have something that's going to be worth a lot of money down the road. Wasn't worth nothing. And then one year he comes in the last day right before tax filing time, wanting me to sign a tax paper for him to where he had a printout with him. And he's wanting to take like this huge $40,000 tax deduction, saying he had all these books that he was doing something with them. And he wanted me to sign off verifying it. And it stated very clearly if I signed off on there that this was a legitimate deduction and the IRS ruled it wasn't, the tax burden would fall on me.
Nice.
I'm not signing that. And, he cussed me out. I'll find somebody who's a friend. Like, dude, you were in competition with me. You never told me who you were until just now when you wanted something from me. He just thought I was a fool he could play. Just showed how little respect for me.
You keep the receipt from when you bought them, and that's your tax deduction. I keep all my comic book receipts because, hey, we got a review channel. It's a legitimate deduction for me.
Yeah, same thing if you buy a home too. I mean, it's like you keep track of all your repairs and expenses. When you go to sell it, you pull out all those receipts, and that all comes off of whatever profit you make on your home.
Mike Walters popping by the chat. Hello, Mike. Glad to see you here. Woody's also lurking out there. Good to see you too as well. But yeah, you talk about people loading up on stuff. Again, growing up in Sparta, when I knew people were bringing home stacks of comics from the print overruns, or just off they just grab handfuls of this title or that title, and they'd be like yard sales were my LCS. But I remember one guy got arrested because there was taking home comics, and there was taking home comics, and one guy had filled a hefty bag with basically his 401k. This was going to be his retirement. He had bundles and bundles and bundles of Marvel Comics Smurfs #1.
Okay.
Because Smurfs was hot. Smurfs was on TV. They were selling Smurf stuffed toys. They were selling little plastic Smurfs. I can follow his thinking. Smurfs was very, very popular. Does not mean that it was going to be a really, really good.
The Marvel #1 got to be something. Yeah,
it's a Marvel #1, and it's a hot item.
Now, when I first opened up a store, I drove up to Sparta to figure out what distribution system I wanted to use. And I went with Pacific Comics, and I met a fellow by the name of King Kruger. He's one of the guys who helped create the Comic Con out there in San Diego, and they had sent him out there to be in charge of their distribution warehouse. And it was in an old fire station. I mean, you had the pole to go down from the second floor back down to the first floor, and but he had himself and his family were living in this 2-story hotel, and they were living in just a couple of rooms just right by the front door, and the whole rest of that building was his book collection. And I bought some rare books of the things that he was involved on publishing. That ended up making it into my Edgar Rice Burroughs chronology. Like he did a book called The Man-Eater. And then one room he was showing me, and he had an entire wall of, I think it was probably like 100 copy, because these were 60 books at the time, Wolverine #1, the 4-issue miniseries #1.
Oh, wow.
Now, back then, they'd string tie them like you would a bundle of newspapers. So the books on the top and the bottom, they were all dinged in from the string tied up, and he had them just stacked up like bales of hay. And I could not talk him into selling me. I said, "I'll just take one of those. I'll take one of those on your hands." He wouldn't sell me any. But gosh, who knows how much money he had there?
That was a Frank Miller run. Everybody wanted that.
It's always been valuable, always in demand. It hasn't gotten super high, but it's steady in demand. It'll always sell.
You can always sell it if you've got one.
Yes.
Ehrenberg says he just read the first 2 issues of Mark Waid's World's Finest. Well written, well drawn, lots of action moving things along. Supergirl looks cute, which hasn't happened in a long time.
Yeah.
Who knew? So yeah.
And that's actually selling fairly well, for all the new titles that they're coming out with. That one's doing pretty good. So.
And I do think it is set in the Silver Age, because I recall she's flying Robin through the sky. They're going back in time for something, and she's going to take him through the time barrier. And she makes a comment, nice pants. And before that, he'd been wearing the green shorts. So only Dick Grayson ever wore the green shorts. It had to have been him. And he's like, just got his arms crossed, and he's like, I'm not talking to you. They'd had some sort of a fight. So yeah, I'm going to have to head back to Rock Bottom Books, free plug, and pick those two issues.
A long time too.
Oh man. And when's the last time you were in there, Mike?
Oh,
if
I
ever.
don't know, probably sometime in the 70s, probably about 5 owners ago.
Oh my God. Okay. So it's like, I walk in and it's like, there's a double-sided rack from the front door all the way to the back. And then there's another double-sided rack all the way to the back. And then there's floor-to-ceiling shelves with omnibuses and trade paperbacks. And it's just packed. I looked for like obscure titles. Yeah, they were there. So since you don't have an LCS brick and mortar anymore, I can say, hey, if you're in Northern Arkansas, go by Rock Bottom Books. You won't be disappointed. It's a really great place. He's got a Batgirl statue in there. And when I say statue, I don't mean like, I mean something like you would stand in your garden like a gnome, tall. It's like 1/4 scale. He says it's $1,000. It's if you remember the chess pieces that they put out from, I can't remember the name of the company now. I'm sure you probably saw it. They put out these like pewter but painted chess pieces of all the DC Comics characters.
Came with like this big cardboard like magazine with it.
Yeah. Had a magazine backer.
I don't think they ever completed that.
Well, they completed the chess sets because they were done and they're still in production. I just can't remember the name of the company. It's a German company. They did the Marvel characters as well, and they've done some other ones. I've got the 2 Batgirls that they did. One was the chess piece and one was just the statue. Anyway, same thing. It was just only taller. It was like $1,000. I'm like, yeah. He's like, it hasn't moved. I'm like, it will. It's waiting for me to get a house. It will move. It will go it will be the frontispiece of my living room right there on the mantle of my fireplace.
Yeah, that's what he's described. That's one of the reasons why I didn't try to carry just a massive selection of graphic novels and statues. One of the things I found out, is my retail in Arkansas, because we're kind of a depressed economy down here compared to other parts of the country. If it got over a $50 price point, it was going to be very difficult to move, and you're going to have to sit on it a long time. So usually I just handle those type of things on a special order basis. I mean, because I'd experiment from time to time, and I'm going to have that for a while, and then finally out someday I'd have a big sale, sell it at a loss, and I'd finally get some of my money back. I mean, I didn't do very well with them. It just that market never was there here in Arkansas.
I don't know if is it because Fayetteville is a college town?
Yeah, it's a different market. Yeah. Of course,
because I talked with a guy before who was running a store in California. I was sitting down to lunch with him and I was like, I'm thinking, maybe someday I'll open a shop and I'll open it, where there's college. He's like, why would you do that? I'm like, because college kids. He's like, yeah, but they're there for 4 years and they're gone. You never have a long-term customer base. It's always new people, and you never know if you're going to get, a couple of years in where comics aren't a thing for that generation, and the ones where they are, they're working somewhere else. They're gone. They left you. But he's been there for years.
Yeah, it's like it was different too. Even between me being two businesses in 2 cities in the center of Arkansas, Pulaski County, separated by the Arkansas River. And what sold on one side of the river didn't sell on the other side of the river. It was 2 completely different markets. I mean, every market is unique. And that's one reason why they've always had trouble having successful chain stores, because you just can't have one central purchaser say, okay, everybody's going to buy this many Archies, everybody's going to buy this many X-Men. It don't work that way.
No, you can't. Boy, Harrowenberg is always on top of the information. Look at this. He's got visiting Fayetteville, Arkansas. He's got the Rock Bottom Books Facebook page. So yeah, definitely do that. Woody, I know you're not too far from me. We really need to get together on sometime. Maybe we can go to Fayetteville and just browse Rock Bottom on a Friday afternoon sometime. But if you're in Fayetteville, North Carolina this weekend, there's one more day for the Comic-Con where Bart Sears and Andy Smith are. Andy Smith is doing First Man again. As a crowdfunded effort. And I did not know this until he did it talked about it on a show. But are you familiar with the Big Brother series that CBS does every year? The lock a bunch of people in a house and then watch them kill each other.
I've never watched one.
Yeah. Well, one of the competitions they always involves comic book covers of the people in the house. They've turned them into some kinds of superhero, and it's like, spot the difference between the covers or which cover had this on it. Well, Andy Park apparently did those covers. Or Andy Smith, I mean, did those covers. And he was talking about how, he had done them. And apparently they didn't get paid a whole lot. DC had said, hey, you do the covers for Big Brother, and here are the characters. I guess he didn't get the original art back or anything.
Well, did there used to be a writer of the Green Lantern comic who came from Big Brother? Kind of, that's where he got known. Can't think of his name.
Judd Winnick.
That's it. That's the guy.
He did the Green Arrow, and he did Pedro and Me. And he didn't come from Big Brother. He came from The Real World, which was on.
I never watched.
Yeah, that's another one. The Real World was Big Brother, but without competitions. It was just, hey, let's watch us live together. It's a soap opera. Big Brother is more of a somebody's leaving every week, like Survivor. So if you took The Real World and Survivor and smashed it together, you had Big Brother. Somebody would always be leaving every week, and you'd have competitions and see who'd continue on in the show. But
sounds like very cutthroat.
Yeah, you remember Chick and George? That is the first season. That is a good 22 to 24 years ago. The show has evolved a lot since then. That first season, the voting was done by people who would call in and say, I'm voting for this guy. I'm voting for that guy. And everybody was up for eviction. Now it's like it's done all in-house, and all you do is watch. You don't have any interaction with it at all, except every once in a while.
Interactive as our society is right now, it's kind of surprising they get away from that.
Yeah, I actually wrote up a pitch for the Big Brother people. I forget the name of I want to say it was Endemol, for a show I called Babel. Of course, no agent. If you don't know anybody, nothing gets through. So it was returned unread, unsurprisingly. But I thought it'd be interesting to have a show like Big Brother, but you had no two people in the house spoke the same language. And then you would divide them into teams every week, and a leader would be picked, and that leader would get instructions in his or her language about the goal that had to be met, what had to be done. And then to see who could communicate to these people who don't understand you the best, and which team would get their goal done, and they would, get the privileges, and these people would not get the privileges. And then
Charades, the international edition.
Yeah, something like that, just to see what it was like. Oh yeah, it was the naked guy who won Survivor Season 1. Harrenberg, there's also a convention going to be in Northwest Arkansas again in May. I just saw a flyer for it posted up. I need to find out about it. There's going to be comics there, but it's going to be more of an anime manga convention. Some voice actors and actresses are going to be there. So it'll be the Northwest Arkansas Mini Con, I believe it's called, as opposed to the Mega Con, I guess, that I went to last month, where your boys Tim Lim and Mark Pellegrini were at signing
done
books.
well.
Yeah, in fact, when I was at Rock Bottom Books, he had gone to the convention as well, and had them sign some things and put them on the shelf. So I'm like, well, you know what? I didn't get the second Common America, and it's signed, so I will have it here now. Yeah, their art is great. In fact, you can't see it. It's around the corner of my closet there. But I had Tim Lim draw. I said, you doing commissions? The con had just opened. So I'm like, first in line. He's like, yeah, $50. And I was like, do me a Batgirl, because I got a lot of them. And I just get different styles now. And
he got a limited edition cover for my Wild Stars initial.
I remember that. Yeah, now he's just got his campaigns. They never fall under $150,000 when he and Mark are working together on this. It's fabulous stuff. But he did a 5x5 tile in, I don't know if it was Coptics or what, but it was full color, and it was in that Common America style of the 1960s Barbara Gordon Batgirl costume. Gorgeous. I put it up on Twitter, and just like everybody was just retweeting the thing because it was. It just looked that good. And yet there it is, the Northwest Arkansas Super Mini Con, May 13th and 14th. And there's the website, superanimefest.com. So it will be an anime thing. All my weebs out there in Arkansas, you know where to go. Hit me up if you're going. Maybe I'll go meet you there. Are you looking at doing any convention kind of appearances, Michael? I mean, you got all this back inventory to get rid of.
Right now I've just got so many writing contracts to fulfill. I'm just, until I get this we're already hired chronology done and gone to the printer. And I need to start working on my next Wild Stars novel because I got the 6th one being serialized now. The 5th one that was serialized last year is about to come out in hardcover. So, I want to keep the ball rolling on those. I got all these other stories I want to write. And then I'm still doing, my mail order stuff for my customers and my eBay stuff. I just can't even get a day off for myself right now. So it's just hard for me to get the time away. I'd like to start being able to do some more activities. I just until I get this chronology done, that's just like my priority. That's all I've done, and that's been my focus every single day about the last year and a half.
Yeah, it's priorities. I completely get that. If you ever get time off, though, let me know if you're going to go to a con and set up a table. I'll pop by and visit you. Heck, I might take the day off and help you just to get out of the house and say, I'm going to sell some comics for Michael today. Herrenberg has found the link, by the way, for all the Andy Smith comic book covers from the Big Brother show. So if you want to check out and see what he did, pretty hot stuff. There is the link, the Big Brother comics. So definitely check that out. What was I going to say? Oh, you were talking about the serialization of your book in Cursova magazine.
Uh-huh.
I just found out that a friend of mine who's also a writer, Troy Reiser, has 2 stories that have been picked up by Cursova magazine.
Good.
So one of the first will be in this upcoming winter issue. I'm like, I got to wait that long. And that, of course, means that the next one's going to be even after that. But, these things, they take time to prepare them in advance. You can't just throw something together and put it out the next month.
Way ahead there. Like the winter issue will have the last part of my Wild Star 6 4-part serial in it. So we'll be in the same magazine together.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll definitely be picking that one up. Get it double signed by y'all. I think we've already talked about what's selling and what's not, or have we? Did we kind of gloss over that? What people are actually asking for?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's just the big event coming up right now is the Death of the Trinity in Justice League, and so right now I'm just kind of hearing the crickets chirping about it. I just no reaction. And of course, they're trying to push on that new Dark Crisis, and again, I just very, very little interest from my customers. I mean, there's definitely event fatigue in the comic book industry. I mean, and it's been that way for a long time. People are just they're event burnt out.
The X-Men Hellfire Gala is happening again, so they're doing another one of those.
Almost nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Yeah, it's nothing major happening. It's dinner. It's dress up funny for dinner. If your regular everyday superhero supervillain costume is just getting boring to you, then give it the Edna treatment and come in with fully frocked out and just be super fashionable.
There was a book or type of book that everybody used to do back about 10, 20 years ago. They stopped doing it, but the swimsuit annual.
Yeah.
Oh, those were popular. Yeah. And I guess, no, you can't do that. That's just wrong. But
you didn't have to write a story.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they seem to want to do nowadays, to show you a bunch of pictures. Well, fine, give people the kind of pictures they want. But the only people really doing that still are like Zenoscope and a couple other, they're doing the Grim Fairy Tales swimsuit issue every year and still doing it. And it's still one of their better selling issues. And there's a few other small publishers like I think Gold Digger does one from time to time. And, those will always be like their best selling issue of their title line. And Marvel and DC, they won't do those anymore. Guess
that's a shame. Doesn't fit the agenda. That goes against the narrative. We don't want to offend the people who don't buy the books anyway.
Right. Yeah, I know.
Just putting that out there.
He doesn't want to buy it, but he doesn't want us to make it. Okay, we're not going to make that. Where's the logic in that? They just made a lot of questionable decisions for a long time, and they're not considering the bottom line. That's why I'm kind of hoping that maybe when they get Discovery in there, they're talking about more vertical integration to have where Marvel finally started getting their act together. Because used to, Marvel was the guys who made the good comic book movies, and because they had Warner Brothers, and then that kind of flipped, and then Marvel, they started making their own movies after they got all that money from the first Spider-Man movie, and started making some own comics. They got Kevin Feige in there, and with Iron Man, then it just took off, and they had vertical, a channel, and straight from the comics into the movies, and they had good control, and they were faithful. They had a unified vision, and they followed it because they had one guy writing shepherd over it. and that worked out real well. Well, now DC's got to one where they don't make the good movies. Marvel makes the good movies now. Used to, the Marvel movies were laughably bad. I mean, just awful.
Yeah.
I mean, even the first Hulk movie, I don't know if you ever saw that one. That was pretty rough. I mean,
It was
the
still
Hulk
rough.
Poodle, and then the disaster that was the Jennifer Garner Elektra. So Abbey Arad said, well, nobody wants to see a superhero woman in a movie. Like, that wasn't right at all. It just wasn't a good movie. And you give them a good movie, and then Black Widow will do well, or whatever. People, it's just it's not that people don't want to see women in the movies; they just want to see a good movie. A good movie. I mean, it's like, look what they did with Wesley Snipes' Blade, an offshoot character nobody cared about. Bam, did really well until the third movie wasn't that good. Then the same thing happened with Iron Man. A second-rate tier character, and now he's like top tier and just doing very well. And if you give a good movie and a good story. And one kind of sad thing for me is, I'm a Burroughs fan and a Howard fan. And who's the guy who does Mandalorian? Who's the producer? He's also in a lot of the movies, like Iron Man.
Oh, I know who you're talking about because he's done, he did Iron Man.
Yeah, Jon Favreau.
Jon Favreau.
Yeah, and so he was wanting to do the John Carter movie. And they just didn't agree with his vision, wouldn't let him do what he wanted to do. So he went over and did Iron Man instead.
Yeah.
Boy, a little bit of a what if there. If one thing had gone a different direction than the other, who knows what could have happened.
Well, Marvel had to use their second tier characters because they'd licensed out.
Yeah.
They'd given away the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and Spider-Man. And, thank goodness Sony is realizing, hey, let's, tap into this market because, we'll make more money with Spider-Man movies in the MCU than we would on his own.
Now, have you seen that last Spider-Man movie?
I have.
That was well done. And I like the way that they took the previous incarnations, all those from another multiverse, and they racked them into them and kind of gave those storylines an ending. I thought it was very well done. You give people a good story, give them what they want, and have the story make sense. Because I remember back in the 80s, even with the DC movies, it's like, the story doesn't matter. It's like the second Batman movie. It killed all the story points, and it just came out as a jumble because they were like, people just want to see big explosions and bangs and this and that. A lot of action. Doesn't matter if it makes any sense. I mean, I can tell you about so many things they did wrong and so many things that they took out of that movie, or they left that in, it would have made sense. It would have been a 10 times better movie. But they're like, just cut out the script. They just need the action.
Yeah, well, the Batman movies, they kept killing the villains. I was like, they don't get to come back. And in another adventure, we're never going to see the Joker again. That kind of, that was the goose that laid the golden egg, and you just choked it there. But the only thing I got confused about the new Spider-Man was like, wait, we can't send these bad guys back to die because they can be fixed. I'm like, you can fix them all you want. You're still sending them back to die.
Yeah.
It's like they're just going to die good people. So,
I really hate seeing Aunt May die, though.
Yeah.
Because before they cast Marissa Tomei to be Aunt May, words that you never would have thought you'd ever hear in the English language was, Aunt May is hot.
Yes, that sentence would never come out.
Nah, you're like, no way. And then Marissa Tomei, okay, I'm down with that.
Yeah, the older I get, the hotter Aunt May looks.
That's it, yeah. So Aunt May was hot. I mean, never would have thought those words would ever come out of anybody's mouth in my lifetime. And then they cast Marissa Tomei, and that all changed. So, they had fun with it. It kept it interesting, and it's enjoyable, So you can have fun, have a good story, have the story make sense. And, if you bring it all together, it'll do well.
Yeah. Heroenberg, by the way, does his own comic book series called Heroenberg. It's a titular name here. He says, speaking of swimsuit issues, we did an entire scene in Heroenberg, episode 19. That would be the live action. Heroenberg does a comic, and he does a web series that's live action costume adventures. That's a multimedia story integration there. In Heroenberg, episode 19, in tribute to that trend, Rosa Perez rises from the pool, dripping wet like Bo Derek in 10, then changes into her costume. That kind of reads a lot to me like that scene from Fast Times at Ridgemont High, where I can't remember her name, comes out of the pool and the guy's daydreaming and the whole thing goes into slow-mo. The 80s were a great time for those kind of movies. swimsuits. Herrenberg, obviously feel free anytime and every time to drop a link into the chat to send people to where they can get your books, because it's a really cool universe that you're building there. And
that kind of goes back to one thing I always would tell my customers is like, if there's no interest for the artist, there's no interest for the reader. And Pretty Girl, I mean, work of art. I mean, we all enjoy seeing that. And so there's nothing bad. As long as you keep it clean and you just we all admire a lovely woman. I mean,
and you know what? It's even okay if you don't keep it clean, if we know it's that kind of book.
Yeah. So I don't sell it to an 8-year-old kid like all of a sudden they got the pitchforks and the torches out in front of me and we're gonna destroy your life. I don't have to worry about that anymore now because everything I've ordered is specifically ordered for people. I'm not dealing with kids anymore. But boy, I had so many kids who wanted to shop my store. I remember when I first started writing for Comic Book Guide, I sent them in a top 10 funny things that every retailer has heard, and one of them was a kid on the phone going, "Hi, do you remember me? I was in your store last week. The kid who bought the comic."
Yeah.
Like
because it happens so rarely.
Comic, that doesn't narrow it down to anybody. You're like, oh yeah, sure, So there's just kids love comics, and they still do, and they always will. And if it's solicited right, you'll know from the previews magazine, I'm not buying this cherry Pop-Tart clone and selling it to kids, because it tells me right there when you run into problems is when you buy Avengers. And suddenly there's something in there. It's a good example of an argument. People used to always say about how they didn't need to tell us because they said, you'd be able to tell by the trade dress. Cherry Pop-Tart was drawn like an Archie comic.
Yeah.
No,
yes, it was.
It doesn't work. You've got to tell people what's in it, and don't surprise them with something. And I had creators that tell me, it's like, well, if I want to take a comic that's been all audiences and all of a sudden make it adults only one issue, I have the right to do that. And I'm sure this is probably the same guy's like, I'm not going to use my turn signal in the car. Ain't nobody's business what I'm going to do. It kind of helps to be part of a community to let other people know what you're going to do, so you don't cause a wreck. And in this case, hurt somebody, being me and my livelihood.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He can say that because guess what? When the rubber meets the road, he's not the one with any skin in the game.
He's all displayed. I'm the guy who takes the impact. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah. I mean, I just realized that Cherry Pop-Tart is still being published, or rather republished, because I've seen reprints of the issues, but they've had like Peach Momoko covers on them. And if you've seen Peach Momoko, she does fantastic work, and she's turning out these Cherry Pop-Tart covers now. She's done work for the Big Two and other things.
Marvel.
Yeah, a lot of work for Marvel. And I was like, whoa, I almost want to buy Cherry Pop-Tart again. And I'm... Yeah. And they're all free to read online, so why would I do that?
Yeah, we know our audience, and so help us, buy the right product. And who knows? I mean, there's probably retailers out there who would look at it and say, I don't have anybody who wants it. But if they knew it was more mature and they had that audience, well, then they'll know to order it. So it's a double-edged blade that cuts both ways. You can hurt somebody by selling something that they don't need to sell to somebody. And at the same time, you're missing your sales because the guys didn't know what you're doing. Communication, always a good thing.
And that always begins at the distributor level. Tell the retailers what they're buying so they can buy the right stuff for their audience.
Yeah, it's like we're selling cans at the grocery store, and you have the name of the cook, but you're not telling us what the ingredients are. It's a can of worms. You don't know what it is until you pop it up. Oh, peaches! I didn't want that.
Exactly. Herrenberg says that was Phoebe Cates in the Fast Times movie that I was thinking of. Yeah, that was. That was a scene that I think we all wanted to watch in slow-mo over and over and over again. And he does include the link to his season 2 video. So do check that out. Go over and check out what he's doing with his channel. Mike, hour and a half in. I think we've exhausted everything. I say that at the hour mark, and then we find something to talk about for a half an hour.
Oh, yeah. One thing we were talking about, I was going to share a story that we were talking about before we went live about, how ex-wives can sometimes devastate a person's collection. And
yes.
The great story had this one customer in there, and he's a real good guy. And he's one time when the economy got real bad, he came in and he had me give like $50 gifts to each one of my employees. He said, don't tell them it's from me, and that's a very nice thing. Well, so this guy, very, very good character type of person. He had an ex-wife who did not understand about his collecting of the comics. And so, and to this day, up until I closed my store, he was coming in, always having to buy things to fill in gaps in his collection where they just mysteriously disappeared. Well, he finally figured out what happened is that anytime she'd be sweeping the floor or cleaning up a mess, she'd just grab a book at random out of his collection, use it as a dustpan, and throw it away with the dust. And this was even after he had an experience where, because she was always disapproving of him buying comics. And then one time he came in, they were getting ready to go on vacation, and he sold me his early X-Men comics, the John Byrne, the good stuff, when Claremont first took it over. And so I said, oh, here's what I can pay you. And so he showed his wife the check and goes, now, you see what I've been trying to tell you? And her eyes got real big. She goes, you got all that money for that itty-bitty stack of comics? He goes, yeah. Do you see what I'm trying to tell you? She goes, yeah. Let's go get the rest.
No, I wasn't wanting to sell all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. He comes in with a cherry-picked list that he knows you need, and then she goes back and just grabs, the first run of, like Checkmate 1 through 20, and says, this is a bigger stack. I should get more money.
That's how so many people think it is, yeah. It's what it is, which one it is. It's also when you try to sell it, too. I mean, there's some things that are valuable now that won't be valuable later. Things that aren't valuable now but will be valuable later. It's an ebb and flow, and you got to keep up with it. And everything does change. But, sometimes you get people who just don't understand the hobby. And I had a lot of employees like that. Just get rid of this blankety-blank stuff. It's just a bunch of junk in the way, And now that junk's worth $30 a pop, and they're doing very well. So
exactly.
Comics is one of those things you got to have patience with. It's also not one of those things that you can immediately flip. And I'll see these guys I know they're going to get burned out when they come in and they're just hot after they're buying stuff, wanting to just kind of rotate around and flip the stuff all the time. But they want to flip it like in 4 months and turn a profit. It don't work that way. And you can't buy retail and turn a profit 4 months later. And so then they become all delusion. And so they go from being super hot on the hobby to bam, they lost all interest, which kind of goes back to what that one fellow was telling that guy about opening up a store. Who knows how long these people will be around wanting to collect something if you go into a college town. Well, sometimes that's the same way it is with the people who are just in it for the money real fast. They're never going to be around very long.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we brought it to a good end. It's always fun sitting around talking about comics with you. One thing we'll do before we finally wrap up is we'll take one last look at SPQR's Bizarre Adventure. It has gone up a little bit while we've been talking. Let's see if it's where it's at right now. I'm trying to get that refresh happen. Here we go. It is okay. So it's at 64.84, which is higher than where we started. Again, links pinned to the top of the chat, folks. This has 30 hours left to go. He's trying to reach that $7,000 goal. I'm thinking that there's going to be something special added to the stretch goals if that happens. I don't know. Not my campaign. Not speaking for it. I'm just saying, check it out. And we found out Peach Momoko did variant covers for the reprints of Cherry Pop-Tarts 1 and 2 recently, and they are on sale at various comic store websites. So there you go. Peach Momoko doing some of the vintage stuff. So,
speaking of Peach Momoko, I'm doing my Robert E. Howard art chronology.
Yeah.
She did a variant cover for the Robert E. or not the Robert E. Howard, for the Frost Giant's daughter for Blaze Comics.
Oh.
And oh my Lord, talk about a variant of a variant of a variant of a variant. Here's the blue version, here's the pink version, here's the other kind of blue pink version. I mean, there's a golden version. I mean, there must be like 10 or 12 variants of her variant out there. And that's one thing I don't like about the industry. We're variant crazy right now.
Well, is it, what was it like they were all released at once, or was it like we released it, we sold out, let's re-release it, but let's make it change so they know it's a second printing, and let's make it change.
A lot of it was, okay, here's this guy's exclusive, here's that guy's exclusive. It's the same picture, but they're just going to change the color pattern a little bit. And so I'm trying to track it down, and nobody's got a complete list. I'm trying to create a complete list of all the versions of variants out there, and trying, it's just like being a detective work. Trying, okay, are there any more versions out there I haven't found yet? Because other places will try to keep track of all the different versions. Grand Comic Book Database woefully missing a lot of stuff.
What about the Overstreet?
Oh, Overstreet, yeah, doesn't have stuff like that. Yeah, they don't even touch that. A lot of times they're really weak on all the variants. They don't even try to cover all those things. And then also they're a little bit behind the Overstreet price guide. I'm an Overstreet advisor. I mean, I love the guide, because they use people like me to come up with the pricing. Where they're effective is on the golden and the silver age. Where they're not too effective is recent stuff because the trends are so volatile. A guide that comes out once a year, that's the last year's prices. By the time it comes out, it's not going to be accurate on the stuff made in the last few years.
I haven't had one in a while.
They're missing a lot of the listings on various. I'll send them stuff sometimes. Sometimes it makes it in there. Sometimes it doesn't.
Well, it's about time for a new one. I think they always come out in April, so I'll be.
Yeah, it's been solicited. Actually, what they're trying to do is I think they're trying to go for a Comic-Con. Now that's kind of got messed up the last couple of years because there hasn't been a Comic-Con.
Yeah,
but that was always they made that change a few years back because it used to be April, like you were talking about. Then they realized, well, hey, here you got this big event where you do a presentation. The publisher was happy because that year gave them a few more months to sell that guide, and then so that way they'd always just do a release of it at the big event of Comic-Con in July, and so
and then everybody would pick one up.
Right, and so that's when they're sticking with the schedule now.
All right. Well, Michael, it's been a pleasure having you on the show again. We'll see you again in 2 weeks for another episode of the LCS Guy. We got to get our brick and mortar buddies back so we can get a more varied report on what's going on out there.
Well, that's one advantage of having gone mail orders. I got time to do a show like this.
Well, that's the thing is the guys running the brick and mortar stores on a Saturday evening. Their shops are still open. They're still serving customers. So
it's a hard day of work. Saturdays are a big day.
Yeah, especially out on the West Coast, it's still definitely business day. It's not like Central Time here. We've closed the shop. We can maybe sit in the back and do some talking. Anyhow, everybody in the chat, appreciate y'all being here. We don't have a show without you, so we're glad you're here. And as always, while you were here, we just hope you had a blast. Good night.
Good seeing y'all.